Breaking news this afternoon out of the NBA, where the league has suspended 76ers star Joel Embiid for 3 games for shoving a reporter in the locker room over the weekend.
The Joel Embiid saga this season has become absolutely insane so far. He has not stepped a foot on the court or has played a game this season, and he has already received a 3-game suspension and a technical foul as well. What is going on in Philadelphia with their superstar, former MVP Joel Embiid, and when is he going to step on the court? Now with this suspension, we're going to take a look at how he got this suspension, also talking about a technical foul that he got despite not even being on the court, and when they expect him to come back this season. So as you all know, Joel Embiid was suspended for 3 games following the Memphis Grizzlies' loss Saturday night. Even though he hasn't stepped on the court yet as well, he will be facing this suspension. And it was because he did shove a reporter. And I'm going to give you guys the facts of the story of what we know now. And you guys can decide whether you think this was a good suspension, a bad suspension, if you think it was warranted or not. But let's talk about what we know. So starting off, Joel Embiid was talking to a reporter after the game, and he was talking to him because he did not like some comments that were said about his family, and he was very upset about them. As we can see a report coming out right here, the second that Joel realized he was there, he got into a verbal back and forth. Obviously, we can't repeat many of the words that were said on this show. The basic gist of it was basically, you can say I suck, you can say whatever you want about me as a player, but don't ever put my dead brother's name in your mouth. Don't talk about my family. Don't bring them into this. You want to talk to me like a man and talk to me about basketball, that's different. But if you ever talk about my family again, we're going to have problems. They would go back and forth for a while, for let's say 90 seconds to 2 minutes in this back and forth, and then Joel shoved him. Team security stepped in, and then everyone in the situation kind of dispersed, and he did not throw any punches, as we know. He just shoved the reporter as well, and the Sixers were later fined $100,000 for their public statements about Embiid's health, which is where these comments came from, and it was because they said that he wasn't going to be playing back-to-back games, so they were fined about this. And this is where the column came from originally, from Hayes, who was the reporter that did get shoved. Joel Embiid consistently points to the birth of his son Arthur as the major inflection point in his basketball career. He often says that he wants to be great to leave a legacy for the boy named after his little brother, who tragically died in an automobile accident when Embiid was in his first year as a 76er. Well, in order to be great at your job, you first have to show up for work. Embiid has been great as just the opposite. Now in his 11th season, he consistently has been in poor condition. This poor conditioning apparently seems to have delayed his debut this season. And this is why Embiid felt like he was disrespected, and these are where the comments came from that he would end up shoving the reporter for. Now, looking at this situation, there's 2 ways to look at it. Obviously, you can be on the side of the reporter, or you could be on the side of Embiid. But as I look at this right now, I do understand why Embiid was upset. Like he said in his comments before, you can talk about him as a player, him as a man, whatever you want to say. At the end of the day, he is an athlete, so he's up for scrutiny, and especially in an area like this in Philadelphia, where a lot of the reporters are very passionate about the players as well, as we know from the fans as well. They want to see Embiid on the court. They want to see this team thrive with a guy that is a superstar in this league, and they want to see him play. But I understand where Embiid's coming from with these comments. Joel Embiid bringing him into this and relating this to his son and his brother that passed in a car accident as well. It is a little bit weird to relate it to something like that. The reporter coming out here saying that if he wants to leave a legacy for these 2 people that I just mentioned, then he actually has to go step on the court. And I understand what the reporter is saying as well, saying that, if if you want to leave a legacy for your son, then you have to go out there and play. But also, I do understand Embiid's point. There isn't really a reason to bring his family into this. You can easily just talk about how you're upset, or maybe you feel like Embiid should be going out there and playing, and he should be going out there as a superstar for this team and leading this team. But I do think that it is a little weird and especially disrespectful to bring his brother into this as well. You can't go out there as a reporter and blame Embiid not playing and say that these things about his family, saying that if you want to leave a legacy for the game, and if you want to leave a legacy for the two people that I mentioned, being his son and his brother that passed away, I just think it is a little bit weird, and I do understand where Embiid is coming from. Do I think he handled this situation the best way possible? No. I mean, at the end of the day, he is an athlete. And even though the athletes and the reporters are both people, at the end of the day, they're human beings. I do think as an athlete with a public figure like that, you are held to a higher standard, whether it's worth it or not in the end, whether it's fair or not to the athletes. They are held to a higher standard. At the end of the day, they're all human beings, but you do have to act a little bit more professional. And I understand why Embiid got very upset in this moment as well. And I do think that having a conversation with him and it escalating to this point with both of them kind of jarring at each other, I can see why Embiid did it. But at the end of the day, you do have to keep your emotions in control and in check. A 3-game suspension, I do feel, is a little bit fair from the NBA. I'm not surprised that they did give a suspension, obviously, with a player shoving a reporter. This shouldn't really be happening, and they want to make sure this doesn't happen again. But I do understand both sides, from the NBA's perspective and from Joel Embiid's perspective as well. Now we can quickly talk about how Embiid was given a technical as well when he was sitting on the bench against the Pacers about a week ago, and he was given a technical foul after the game for waving a towel on the bench as well, which is a little funny to think about considering he wasn't actually in the game as well, and Philly was already leading with 16 seconds left, and no foul was called during the game, and that's why it's interesting that they would give this out after the game as well. But now let's talk about why Embiid hasn't been playing yet this season, which is kind of where all this controversy has started from as well. Embiid last year, as we know, did get injured and missed a good amount of time, and then would come back in the playoffs, but then would get injured again, having multiple injuries during that time as well, going out there with almost half of a face, with one leg, and still putting up numbers and fighting against the Knicks. But now, with this suspension, it is going to take a little bit longer for him to come back, as he also is dealing with that knee injury from last season. They're waiting and they're ramping him up to be able to play for this season, and I guess they're waiting for him to be completely healthy before he comes back, but obviously with that suspension, it is going to take a little bit longer as well. We don't really have a set timeline for when he's going to come back at this point. It seems like it's going to be within the next month, with Paul George just debuting for the Sixers this week on Monday as well. So now we're going to have to wait a little bit longer for Embiid to come back, and we'll see if he's eligible for awards at the end of the season, depending on how much he plays this year. But it does seem like Embiid is going to be returning at least before the end of the year, before the end of December as well. It seemed like he was going to return this week specifically, but with that 3-game suspension, that may last a little longer. So we do expect to see him by the end of the month at the very latest, I would say. So if you are a Sixers fan, I wouldn't be too worried as well. They're trying to make this injury kind of be not lingering throughout the whole season like we have seen in the past with Embiid having those lingering injuries. They're trying to make sure he's 100% by the time he gets on the floor. And then this team, which has started off 1-5, can actually start to build some momentum back together as Paul George and Joel Embiid will both be healthy. So let me know down below what you guys think. What do you think of this suspension, and when do you think Joel Embiid will finally return to the court for the Sixers? Do you think they have a good chance to win still this year? Let me know down below, and I'll see you guys in the next one. And I have a pound of weed and a gold.